Got to concede that the Prime Minister today did have a point about the Coalition's defence policy.
This is once again a media release in search of a policy, a media release in search of some detail. It's extraordinary that you make this announcement with a very large figure in the tens of billions of dollars. You can't say what you will use the money for.
Our Prime Minister wears a high-vis so often, he must by now have built a house at least, surely. I wish you could point us to what he's doing with this high-vis. Anyway, joining me is Peter Jennings, a former Deputy Secretary for Strategy in the Defence Department, now Director of Strategic Analysis Australia. He's also co-author of this new book that I've highlighted before in this show, No Higher Priority, spelling out exactly what we do need to spend on for our military. Peter Jennings joins me now. The Coalition's defence policy today, Peter, and thank you for joining me. Your response?
Well, I would have liked to have seen it sooner, and I would have liked more detail as well, but there's now a measurable difference between the Coalition and Labor on defence, and the measure is $21 billion, which is the extra money that the Coalition would spend over the first 5 years, lifting defence spending from 2% to 2.5% of GDP, and then in the 5 years after that, lifting it to 3%. So, you know, that's a very considerable sum. It would actually go quite a long way to reverse the significant decline that the Defence Force has gone through over the last 3 years or so. And it would start to give us the capacity to bring into defence a range of long-range weapons and new technology, which we most surely need, Andrew, for the strategic circumstances that we're facing with a more aggressive China and now Russia piling into the region as well. So I think this needs to be taken seriously, and I hope people do consider it carefully before they vote.
Yes, I do find it curious they didn't say where or even indicate where it would be spent. I wonder whether it's because they promised so much other money during the campaign. They ran out of what they hoped to do, and now they haven't figured out what the priorities really are, how to make it all fit. But look, your book, and we've talked about this before, Peter, you've got a whole list of suggestions here. If I gave you $21 billion to spend over 5 years, what would you spend it on? What should it be spent on?
The first thing I'd do is look for weapons that have got range and can deter aggression in our region. And so that would make me look to things like the long-range strike bomber, the new one, the B-21 that's rolling off production lines in the United States. I think we're going to have to urgently address the failure of the Collins-class submarine, the significant delay now in upgrading those submarines, because I suspect what's going to be found is that they can't be upgraded, and therefore to avoid a gap between the Collins retiring and the nuclear submarines arriving, we're going to need some sort of interim capability. And then finally, Andrew, stemming the flood of people leaving the Australian Defence Force because they know that this current government doesn't have their back. They've watched the Defence Force lose so much capability that I don't think we could in 2025 mount a large-scale stabilisation operation like we did in East Timor 2.5 decades ago. And so finding ways to make people want to join and to see the value of military service, I think that's where my priority would go.
Honestly, when you say that, Peter, that we couldn't even mount an East Timor type operations, think really what that means, viewers. East Timor, we were fighting a militia with shotguns and bows and arrows. And even then we needed American logistical support to get our troops and weaponry over there. That's how weak we were. And now we can't even do that when the world's biggest army is threatening us. Peter, that is such a frightening thought.
True though, Andrew. I mean, we don't have the troop lift capability with helicopters because the government inexplicably grounded them and buried cut the helicopters up and buried them. We don't have the logistic support capability because the government took a decision not to buy 2 support ships for the Navy. The list goes on, a significant reduction in the numbers of armoured vehicles that are being produced. We've cut significantly the current Defence Force in order to pay for what I call the fantasy force, Andrew, which is the future force we'll get at least in 10 or 15 years' time with the new submarines. But of course, the force we need is the force that's going to address the strategic downturn in the second half of the decade. And that is terribly under-equipped at the moment and leading to a significant morale problem in the ADF.
Honestly, Peter, this is just so sad. Just finally then, there's criticisms of the coalition's plans, fair enough. Labor, meanwhile, as you suggest, has cut a lot of military spending on fighters, on howitzers, on armoured vehicles, on support ships, on patrol boats, anti-mining stuff, among many other things. Comparing Labor's defence policy to the coalition's, which is better?
Oh, clearly the coalition, Andrew. I can give you 21 billion reasons why it's better, and that's the extra dollars that a Dutton government would spend on it, giving some hope to the ADF to think that they're being supported by government, and strengthening our position in an increasingly dangerous strategic environment. There's frankly a very clear choice now. I think the coalition government, by virtue of lifting that spending to 2.5% of GDP, is a much more superior offer.
Well, I'm glad you maintain that opinion in the face of this press frenzy over what Andrew Hastie said about women in combat 7 years ago that suggests, I can't believe what just preoccupied our journalists,
stuff.
Given what you've just, look, honestly, it is so. We have got such a deeply unserious polity now, Peter. You would despair. Peter Jennings, thank you so much for your time.